Now I'm going to read to you from, it's now August, Seth died in the very end of December. Now it's August and I'm making another trip to Port Townsend. In August I make another trip back to the Port Townsend house Seth designed. I find a letter I left on my desk. It was written by a man I consider a spiritual guide. I had asked him about the sun that day at Gold Mountain. "Oh, Sheila, the sun is the giver of life and the receiver of death," he wrote. "The sun is the beginning and the end of an octave." He added words from Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson by George Gurdjieff, a man who looked to ancient traditions to understand the meaning of human life. The most holy sun absolute, where our Lord's sovereign endlessness has the fundamental place of his dwelling. I looked up the word octave, the interval of 8 diatonic degrees between two tones of the same name, the higher of which has twice as many vibrations per second as the lower. I read that the human ear tends to hear notes an octave apart as essentially the same. Birth and death, the anchors of our individual octaves. In being here to experience Seth's death, as I was at his birth, I have the opportunity to believe and to live the idea that his new higher vibration is something I can't hear but can feel. "I will drive you around and around," Seth said. Something he said so I could write poetry. "You and Seth have been together before in many lives," the first shaman said. "Villanelle, circle lost, retrieve it because holding it is important." All these months, the images I responded to were about the way lives are cradled by endlessness. I pick up Duino Elegies, a small book by Maria Rilke I left on my desk next to the letter. I remembered that I had found the poems comforting in the way that the music of words comforts me, even if I can't concentrate on meaning. Now I lay the letter down and open the book of poems from the back, remembering my spiritual guide told me that he opened all books as if they were Hebrew books, reading back to front. I stop on the pages of Rilke's 8th elegy. In it, he writes about the sovereign endlessness. "Never for a single day," he writes, "do we have before us that pure space into which flowers endlessly open. Always there is world and never nowhere without the no, that pure unseparated element which one breathes without desire and endlessly knows. A child may wander there for hours, though the timeless stillness may get lost in it and be shaken back, or someone dies and is it. For nearing death, one doesn't see death, but stares beyond, perhaps with an animal's vast gaze." I turn again to the letter on my desk. I have the strong impression that Seth's essence and his personality were well balanced. Consequently, his life, short in our usual thinking, was in fact far longer than is usual, simply because so many impressions were received directly in his essence. This doesn't happen to most of us because our personalities are so strong they block impressions from touching us deeply, and essence is buried very deep. Something, I don't know what or who, tells me that Seth is all right. Something knows something. That is probably the extent of my knowledge, and that is my search, my friend wrote. I thumb further backwards through the little book of Rilke's elegies. In the 7th elegy, I read, "For each of you had an hour, or perhaps not even an hour, a barely measurable time between two moments, when you were granted a sense of being, everything. Your veins flowed with being. But we can so easily forget what our laughing neighbor neither confirms nor envies. We want to display it, to make it visible, though even the most visible happiness can't reveal itself to us until we transform it within. Nowhere, beloved, will world be but within us. Our life passes in transformation, and the external shrinks into less and less." I actually felt impressions of endlessness directly, only a barely measurable time. When I brought my son's ashes to the ground I knew he wanted to stand upon. My veins flowed with being again when I sat with Kristen at the synagogue, readying for Seth's funeral services, and sun seemed suddenly to break through a hall window to shine on us. I felt it the day of the family ceremony at Discovery Bay as we returned the rest of Seth's ashes to the world. The gray sky had again broken open with sun. I felt sun flow into my veins when I walked on my way to a first meeting of the grief support group I was hesitant about joining, and I felt it each morning when I watched the new sun in the sky. These moments were very brief, but they were direct. Something knows something. This must be, I think, what Rilke means by nowhere without the no. I leaf further from back to front in Rilke's elegies. I stop this time at the first elegy. "In the end, those who were carried off early no longer need us. They are weaned from earth's sorrows and joys as gently as children outgrow the soft breasts of their mothers. But we who do need such great mysteries, we for whom grief is so often the source of our spirit's growth, could we exist without them?" Before he was 2, I thought Seth had weaned from my breast to go on and explore life. I realize that now I have to wean myself from wanting to see him in his life's quandaries and ecstasies, which job to take, and before that when to marry Kristen, and before that which graduate school to attend, and before that whether to be on a mountain biking team, and before that which college to choose, and before that how to build sets for the school plays and the mock trial courtroom, and before that whether to go to the grocery store with me or stay home watching TV, and before that how to know it was his play on the soccer field, and before that how to tell us he thought kisses had too many germs. Instead of wishing to add to the list from the top down, now I have to let Seth enter into my life from my memories. I have to wean myself from wanting to see him alive in earthly joys and sorrows. I have to let in whatever comes of him apropos of the present. Do you think, he always said if I told him what I thought he might consider when he hadn't yet made up his mind. When Seth weaned from my breast, he didn't wean from my love. I won't wean from his or from the love I feel for him. I can give up future stages in our lives together on earth without giving up love. Seth taught me how he did it when he gave up the breast, hadn't he? Do you think? I say to him. Having finished my journey reading from back to front, I thumb forward to Rilke's 10th elegy. Here I find something more that I need. But if the endlessly dead awakened a symbol in us, perhaps they would point to the catkins hanging from the bare branches of the hazel trees, or would evoke the raindrops that fall onto the dark earth in springtime. And we, who have always thought of happiness as rising, would feel the emotion that almost overwhelms us whenever a happy thing falls. When Emily, my daughter, was very young, maybe 3, she described a dream she'd had. She said, "Mommy ran like raindrops and floated up to the sky. She hung her umbrella up on a cloud and fell back down to earth, watering the flowers. I had flown into the sky and come back down to earth, watering the flowers. My daughter told me then that when a happy thing falls, those of us low feel embraced." I leave the book and the letter on my desk, and I go outside into the garden in front of the house to pull sorrel and crabgrass from the damp earth under moon yarrow. I delight in finding stray California poppies and orange calendula under the rock roses, small juniper and pines. Creeping thyme covers the pathways, and I breathe its fragrance as I rest on the steps to my deck. Then I pace the deck back and forth between its covered and uncovered portions. This house is alive with my son and my son's spirit. His art is here, not only the photographs he took and the picture frames he made in woodshop and the rendering he drew in an architecture class, but his aesthetic is also in the balance of the room's proportions and dimensions, the window placement, the gentle roof, and the setback from the street. To my mind, he sits afternoons in the hammock as he did each summer home from college. Evenings he settles with me on our cedar chairs to watch the sunset, and mornings I hear him taking his kayak out from the crawl space under the house. I know in the phantom life he pulls the kayak down to the beach on the little set of wheels he put together, then paddles quietly out toward the Olympics, turns right towards North Beach and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. His hair is streaked with sun, his arms tanned and strong. He laughs at my worries and tells me that I did a good job of raising him and must trust him. And I know that believing whatever compelled Seth to snowboard on that day without a helmet, whatever it was on that run at Breckenridge, is bigger than his earthly presence and as necessary to me now as breathing. I must trust him. I don't know how I know that, only that something knows something. A few hours after I fall into a deep sleep, the light of the almost full moon wakes me. I go outside to look at it and find the sky covered with clouds, but somehow the moon appears to be in front of the quilted sheet of them. I look and I look and I look again. Still, it appears the moon is glowing in front of the clouds, and behind the moon, clouds are bright from the moonlight, like a curtain behind a bowl. Light what is veiled, I think, and I repeat words I memorized from the Prechtel interview I had read at the beginning of the book in The Sun. A shaman is someone who deals with the problems that arise when we forget the relationship that exists between us and the other world that feeds us, or when, for whatever reason, we don't feed the other world in return. And that's the world of roots. We're the world that the roots allow to grow. For us to sustain this world, we have to feed the other world, is what this shaman was explaining. I will feed my son with what he never weaned himself from, my love and my gratitude for his time here with me. This is my sustenance, the food that needed sowing and harvesting. I could not merely snatch this food from the platters that many served up to me. The small yellow fish and the stars have to take up residence inside. They have to be ingested into every cell of the body. To feed your dead, you must metabolize the world.